Alrighty. Parker McCollum has released his brand new full-length LP, Chain Cowboy, and it's time to talk about it. Parker McCollum is an artist from Texas who originally burst onto the scene in 2015 with his debut album, The Limestone Kid, an album I thought was definitely a strong introduction to the music world, but it was an album that I never revisited that much because it was his 2017 follow-up album, Probably Wrong, that I fell in love with, to the point where anytime I was craving some Parker McCollum, I would and still go straight to Probably Wrong. I will not hesitate to call that record one of my favorite country albums of all time. It's legitimately up there. But then Parker sort of just disappeared. He went super quiet in 2018 and 2019, before coming back signed to a big label in Nashville, bursting on with what has become his biggest hit to date, Pretty Heart. A song I enjoyed for the most part, even though it didn't feature the specific storytelling that was prominent on his first two records. I still found it a compelling song with a lot of emotion put forth. But from the release of Pretty Heart to this here album, Chain Cowboy, to say Parker's output was a little scattered would be quite the understatement. Following Pretty Heart, he put out Like a Cowboy, which was this cinematic western piano-driven ballad that featured one of Parker's best vocal performances to date. He then threw Young Man's Blues at us, which was another really quality track. Then towards the end of 2020, he gave us the Hollywood Gold EP, featuring the two songs previously mentioned, along with Pretty Heart, as well as Halle Light, which felt straight from his Probably Wrong album in the best way, as well as the mellow Hold Me Back, which I found really compelling. Given the subtle vocals driven by the bass line, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Then Parker kicked off 2021 with To Be Loved by You, as well as Drinkin', both featured on this new album, before the final pre-release Rest of My Life, which brings us to where we are now, with Pretty Heart being released for a third time as a part of this full-length album, but without anything else from Hollywood Gold or the singles prior like Young Man's Blues. So going into this album, I was pretty concerned and confused at the same time. Confused as to why Pretty Heart was being released again, but concerned because A, Chain Cowboy just sounds like a miserable mainstream pop wannabe title, but also B, the album didn't include any of the singles I really got into, but rather To Be Loved by You and Drinkin', which though they have grown on me, especially in the context of the album, they just don't have that passion or inspiration I felt from anything Parker had released up until that point. However, I'm happy to report back, this thing definitely surpassed my expectations. It just took an unexpected route to meet them. In my mind, the only way back on track for Parker was to go back to his old, colorful, piano-driven, melancholy sound, because from the pre-releases, the mainstream country rock fusion just wasn't working. And while the rest of this album is still in this mainstream sound, in my opinion, Parker found ways to make the most out of it, and the end result is a fun, enjoyable, at times clever record that I think achieved what it set out to do in the best way possible. And I think one of the big reasons for this is the fact that it feels unique and personal to Parker. My big issue with the pre-releases like Drinkin' was it felt like they were trying to bury everything that made Parker Parker, and just mold him into another Nashville poster boy wearing skinny jeans and gold chains as the title would suggest. But the album cuts on here are far from cookie cutter or uninspired, both sonically and lyrically. Take, for example, the opener, Wait Outside, where Parker is saying how he's going to love this girl until the day that he dies, which sounds like every Dan and Shay song ever, but then he throws a fun and unique twist, saying how he's still going to love her in heaven, he's just going to have to wait outside. And it's something as small as those last two lines that take this track from background noise to an actual fun listen. It's a funny idea, not a new idea, but Parker presents it in a humorous, one-of-a-kind way. And again, instrumentally, it's nothing we haven't heard from any other country rock fusion, but it's arranged and structured in such a way that it doesn't end up feeling lazy as much as it does intentionally and strategically warm and dense. As I mentioned earlier, all throughout this record, there's great examples of Parker putting his own spin on and making the most of this mainstream rock sound. And I think one of the best examples of that is the fifth track, Falling Apart. Lyrically, it's quite an interesting spin on a breakup, a very Parker McCollum track, which sounds stupid, but all I mean by that is Parker is often very hard on himself in his music. Therefore, this song is a real through and through Parker McCollum take on a breakup. It's basically Parker saying how he saved this girl from himself by dumping her, because while she was falling in love, he was falling apart, and it would have just led to disaster down the road had it kept going. But it's really the production that takes this thing to that exquisite standard. It begins with a synth wave that lays the foundation, which honestly ends up working a lot better than you'd think. Big bellowing drums through the verses that are massive and loud but not obnoxious. And then when the chorus hits, it's the whole yard sale with rockin' pianos, massive guitar shreds with the drums crashing, and when you pair that with arguably Parker's best vocal performance on this whole record, it really comes together nicely. We even get some wicked solo guitar work at the end to cap it off in exotic fashion. It's really just a fine work of art. It's like the breathtaking sci-fi photorealistic painting of the gallery that is this record. Where songs like Drinkin' just feels like a painter chucking paint at a canvas until it's full, Falling Apart feels, like I said, a fine work of art, if that makes any sense. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. And then straight after Falling Apart, we're hit with yet another top-tier track, Heart Like Mine, a song about Parker saying how he misses this girl and hates that he truly didn't fall in love with her because he could see she had the only heart like his. As if he's never going to find someone as well fit for him, because when he finally did, he wasn't able to fall in love. Again, it's not a new idea to say you found your perfect match and it didn't work out, or to try and paint this picture of you and your significant other just being different than the rest of the world, but Parker just presents it in a more thought-provoking manner that makes you sit down and think about what he's saying. And while maybe it's not as soft as I think it should have been, the production is still tasteful, it's still impactful, and complements the song nicely. I think the fan favorite at the moment, though, is Rest of My Life, which is this beautifully depressing song about Parker looking around, seeing the miserable situation he's found himself in, and is now realizing this is what the rest of his life is going to look like. It's Parker just struggling to process this lonesome, drug-ridden life that is what he has to look forward to until it's all over. So then to cope, he just says he'll let a couple hours go by and he bets it's going to be alright. It's backed with these grand, echoing piano chords, really adding this darkness to the vibe, but then to contrast that, it has the prettiest harmonica sweeping in to attempt to lighten the mood, and it all just comes together as this lyrical and sonic contrast that creates this harrowingly gorgeous track. However, with all that in mind, I think my favorite track being offered here is the 7th, Why Indiana, a song that finds Parker asking this girl why she broke up with him over the phone while he was in Indiana where there's nothing to do or nowhere to go to distract himself. It could have been in Vegas or somewhere out west. It could have been in Memphis with an old man singing his blues, but why Indiana on a clear sky day? I specifically love the line, why not in Portland in the pouring rain? The second verse is all about Parker asking her why she couldn't have broke up with him in person, but if she's gonna do it over the phone anyways, why did she have to do it in Indiana? And again, tasteful guitar licks, a great driving yet slightly offset beat with powerful vocals, what's not to love? The closer, Never Loved You at All, is arguably the most country track being offered here. From the drunken, wobbly steel found all over this track, to the slightly detuned honky-tonk piano, it feels like a proper bar song, almost giving me low-key Brothers Osborne vibes, especially with the woozy delivery and whatnot. However, though it is a great track, I don't know how well it actually fits on this record, especially given its placement right at the end. It almost feels like more of a bonus track you'd find on a deluxe re-release. I just think a song like Rest of My Life would have been a better, more fitting closer, especially since it too feels awkwardly tossed in between Why Indiana and Pretty Heart. I think in my perfect world, we could have cut Never Loved You at All, slap Rest of My Life at the end, and add a song like Halle Ray Light or Young Man Blues, so it maintains this crispy, clean 10-song track list. So with all that in mind, I don't want it to sound like this is a perfect album because it's far from. As I said, I do have an issue with how some of the track list was ordered, and it does still have songs like Drinkin', like To Be Loved By You, which again, though they've grown on me, I'm still not big on. There's Dallas, which I find pretty forgettable, but I think the rest of this album was a lot better than I was expecting. As I said, I was pleasantly surprised with the originality Parker was able to push through despite some obvious corporate influence. Rating-wise, I would give this album a strong 7, think like a 7.5. I think if you're a day one Parker McCollum fan, there's a lot to like here, and if you're a new fan, I think this acts as a great gateway into some of his older music, as well as similar artists like Co Wetzel and that whole Texas country rock scene. Yeah, I'm just impressed. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Be sure to comment what you thought of this album in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed. If you're new, maybe consider subscribing for more country music content. Links to both my Instagram and Discord and podcast are in the description below. Be sure to check all those out. And yeah, until next time, have a great day.